So we've set up two EC2 instances. We did one doing the, in a nutshell, quick setup so that you can see just how fast the process is once you understand it. And then the rest of our journey has been this deeper dive into the various details surrounding EC2. Now, if the concepts are still a bit fuzzy, I would encourage you to go back and review those videos again to make sure that the information actually gets digested. Some of the concepts and information, no matter how eloquently they're explained, they still take some time in your mind to roll over until they start connecting with everything else. So just understand that some of it still may be fuzzy in the solution. Just watch it again, read up on it from some different angles, but at least you have a great compass, being this series, to begin from to start adding to the knowledge. Speaking of which, even though we understand how to set up servers, I wanted to take some time to show you how to do something more practical. So what we're going to be doing in this video is launching yet another EC2 instance. And in this instance, we're going to set up a Node.js based web server. We're going to get it up on the web and take a look at it. Now, the main point of this is just to give you something that you can show to other people, something that you can begin using in your other projects. But this is not a Node.js course, so I'm not going to go into the the nitty-gritty surrounding that framework and how it works. Okay, so I am over in the AWS console. I am in the instances, and you'll see that I don't have any of my instances. And I did this intentionally just to clean things up. And I wanted to start from scratch again, make a brand new instance, just so you can get really familiar with seeing this process. So going through this quickly, we want to launch an instance. We want the Amazon Linux 2 AMI. We're going to leave it T2 micro. As far as all of these options in here go, we're going to leave all of them as is and click next, add storage. For storage, this looks good. Tags, we do need to add some tags. We'll add the learn EC2. And for the tag, we'll give this capital N name, and we'll do third instance, just so we know where it came from. And then go to the security groups. Now, for the security groups, we want the same rules. We want to be able to SSH into them, and we also want to receive HTTP traffic. So we could create a brand new thing again, but we've already done this multiple times. So instead, what I'm going to do is click on select an existing security group. And we have those two instance security groups we created previously. Well, we could just pick one and use one, but I like being a little bit more explicit in terms of what belonged with what came about with what. So what I'm going to do instead is just click copy to new on the second instance security group. Granted, you could click on the first one and it'll all work just the same because they have the same rules, but clicking copy to new, it'll put all those rules that we needed in here, and I'll rename this to third instance SG, and I'll leave the launch wizard timestamp description here as well. And I'll click review and launch. So everything looks fine here. And when I click launch, I'm going to choose an existing key pair. And I'm going to just use one of those key pairs that we created for the other servers. So I'll just do US East 1 and click the checkbox and say, yep, that's great. Launch instances. And now it'll go off and make my instance for me. Alrighty. So to get this all going, first thing we need to wait till this instance state says running. And what we're going to need to do is install Node.js from source. And so there's this nice, helpful GitHub repository. It's called Node Source Distributions. And if you come over to this page, what we need to find is this enterprise Linux-based distributions. And in here, it's going to give us the curl request and subsequently the bash setup script here that we can run to get Node.js installed on our EC2 instance. Now, if you're looking at this page, you may be wondering, well, geez, there's a lot of different distributions. How do you know which one to use? Well, if you're on Amazon Linux 2 and Amazon Linux, you're going to want the enterprise Linux-based one. And that's because as far as the community can tell, and as far as everyone can tell, Amazon Linux is based upon the Red Hat Enterprise Linux version. And because of that, it uses Yum. And because it uses Yum, this is the area that we need. This is the link that we need to install Node. So let's hop back over to the instances and see what our instances is up to. Okay, it's still instance state, so we'll talk about the other thing. So we'll install Node.js. We'll get that up on our server. And after that, we will use loopback, so an enterprise-grade API framework, to just scaffold out a quick Node.js-based application so that we can get it up on the web. So let's take a look here. Hopefully this is almost done. Alrighty, looks like my instance is up and running. Status checks are still going, but that's fine. So what I'm going to do is grab the public IP, and I'm going to hop over to my shell, and we're going to SSH into it. So make sure, of course, that you have that key added to your keychain. And again, the command to add that key is just SSH add and then the key itself. So for me, it would be this. So there's my key, and the key happens to be in the same directory for me, which we can see here. If you're on Mac, though, be sure to do the tag uppercase K with it as well. Otherwise, it will not work correctly. Okay, so mine is already on this chain though, so I'm gonna just go ahead and SSH into this. So EC2 user, the public IP address. Yes, we want to connect. And here we are inside of the instance. So nothing new here. Whoops. First thing we need to do is update the package index. So update tag Y. And that's just going to make it so it says yes to any inquiries as it installs or updates these packages. And so that's good and done. And by the way, the reason that we have to do that is because with Yum, the Yum package manager, it can only install packages that it's aware of. So for our next step here, we can't install Node.js yet. We need to make Yum aware of the fact that it can install Node.js and of course where to get it. So we need to grab this command here. So the node 10.x one. The reason we're using 10.x and not 11 or 12 is because if we take a look at the Node.js page, 10 is the long-term support version. It is the stable version and what you should use if you're doing anything production-wise. So I'm going to copy that command, hop back over here into my shell, which is of course connected to the instance we just created. I'm going to paste that command in, but don't run it just quite yet. The first thing we're going to do is run the script that gets downloaded as the root user. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. This will make Node available everywhere. Well, not Node available everywhere, but what it will do will give us the ability to install Node.js everywhere. So sudo yum install tag y Node.js, and we just see that command right here at the end of that script. I'm going to run that. And by running this command, we're going to go ahead and get both Node.js and the associated package manager npm. To confirm that it's been installed, we'll just run node tag version. Yep, looks good. npm tag version. Okay, good. Everything is there. We also need some additional tools here that we're going to need to install loopback and loopback's command line interface to generate an application. So I'm going to run sudo yum install tag y again, and we need gcc, c++, and make, although I believe make comes pre-installed on the Amazon Linux 2 AMI, but just for good measure, even if it is already installed, it won't do anything, so no harm done. So these will go ahead and install, and once those are good, we are now ready to install the loopback command line interface. Now, I'm going to install this tool, this Node.js based tool, globally, and I'm going to install it as the root user. And the reason I'm doing it like this is because what we're doing here, we're going to scaffold out an application on an instance, is not how you would scaffold an application out in real life. In real life, you're going to make the application, probably locally, put that source code in a version controlled repository like GitHub, and then pull it down to your instance. So you won't have to deal with this. So I'm going to run sudo npm install tag g, and then we're going to add this option here called unsafe permissions. And this is just going to let us install this as a root user, as the global user, and therefore allow us to use the tool globally as well. Now, in terms of, oh, well, this looks like unsafe. Well, it would be if we were hosting something and if people could connect to this tool and this tool was being used by people outside of this instance, by outside of us. But all this is, all the loopback CLI is a scaffolding tool. We are going to run it once to make our application and never use it again, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and put that command in and let all of these things install. Okay, looks like my loopback CLI finished installing. Once that's installed, the way you interact with the loopback CLI is two letters, LB. LB is the tool itself, and it's how you give the loopback CLI commands. And the way that you generate an application is you just run LB without any other options or any other parameters set onto it. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to run LB here, and this is going to ask us some questions. What's the name of your application? Well, I'm going to just call it app because I'm extremely creative here. What directory do we want to put it in? I am going to also continue my creativity and just call it app. We'll see it make a directory for us. We want the 3.x long-term support, and we want an API server. So after doing that, what it's doing is it's making some base files, and then it's going to install all of the dependencies. And that's all we're going to do with this tool. That is why installing this as the root and using it with the options we did doesn't matter, because this is the only time we're using it. And plus, this is mainly just to show you that, hey, he's just using this EC2 instance like I would use my local computer. And I want you to think about these like this. This is just a computer up on AWS that you can log into and do whatever you want, however you would. And a lot of what you can do on it is a lot of what you do on your own computer. Okay, so with that done, let's do an ls. And we can see that our little app folder has been created here. If we cd into the app, in ls-la, just to see the full thing here, we can see all of the files that were just scaffolded. And so that works out beautifully. Now, to start your loopback application, all you need to do is be in the app directory, which we are, and then you just need to run node dot. As soon as you do this, we'll get the message that the web server is listening on port 3000. Now, if we hop over to our EC2 instance, in our public IPv4, and we copy it and we put it in the browser, we will see that the site can't be reached. Now, why can't the site be reached? Well, there's two reasons. The first one, you're going to say, oh, well, let me go over to my shell here. It's listening on port 3000. What if we put port 3000 here? Well, what if we do that? Oh, nothing happens. So the second reason this isn't working is because our security group, if we view the inbound rules, does not allow traffic from port 3000. It only allows HTTP traffic on port 80. And so to deal with this, we need to make it so that when a user connects to port 80, they are indeed getting our loopback application. So let me go ahead and stop it listening here by pressing Control-C on Mac at least to end it. Now, what you might be tempted to do is come in here and change the server to listen on port 80. But that's pretty dangerous to do, especially since we're operating as the root user and will be when we write our script in the next video. So what you would normally do, and the longer, more roundabout way, and the way that you would approach, especially if you're trying to hit scale, is you would set up a router in front of this, so something like Nginx, and you would just redirect port 3000, traffic intended for port 3000 to port 80. Or sorry, the other way around. You would redirect traffic intended from port 80 to port 3000. And you know, that's fine, but we really don't want to dive into Nginx because setting up an Nginx server on this with Node would be overkill for this series. So instead, we're going to do something quicker. We're going to use IP tables to just do a very quick redirect. So IP tables, let's go ahead and look what's in the ones as they are. And there's no policies as there are right now, which is good. So what we want to do, IP tables, NAT, and don't worry too much about these options, but what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, when we're routing here, did I spell this right? Yes, I did. For the type of TCP traffic, which by the way, HTTP is just a type of TCP traffic. What we want to do here, and that's what this statement is saying. In fact, it'll be easier for me to just type it out and then say it. This is going to set up a rule in our IP table, which handles, as you can probably guess, how traffic is routed within our server. What we're going to set this up to do, and what this command does, is it's going to say, hey, any traffic coming in on port 80, we want you to redirect to our port 3000. So let me just go ahead and put that in, and I'll run the previous command, and now we'll actually see that rule here in our IP table. Okay, so here we go, redirect HTTP traffic to port 3000. And so with that done, we're actually good to go. So if we come over here in our app and we type node dot to start the server, it's going to be saying, hey, okay, good, that's great. Once it actually does it here, yeah. We're listening on port 3000. And so when we come over here though, port 3000 is still not going to work. And we'll see it hang here. And by the way, when you're working with EC2, when something's hanging like this, that's usually the best indicator that one of your security group rules is off. And that's exactly what it is. We don't have port 3000 open, but port 80 is open. And so if we make an HTTP request without a port, it's going to go to port 80. Well, let's see what happens. Oh, there we go. Now we see that this is up and running. And why is this up and running? Because that port 80 traffic we're sending is being redirected to port 3000. And there we go. Here's our web server. We can go to /explorer. And in /explorer, we'll see the loopback API Explorer where they have their default user model that's built in set up. And we can do whatever we want here. Alrighty, and that's it. So we've got our node-based application on EC2 up and running, and we have it in the IP address, but if you wanted to just grab the public DNS, you could also do that and just swap out the IP, put it in, and it's all the same. And of course, if you wanted to CNAME this in your domain name provider, that'd be more than a valid option. Obviously, tackling HTTPS is another topic for another time, but you see the bread and butter right here